Hello YouTube, and welcome to the first video on my new upload schedule. Today we're talking about one of the largest Nordic ruins we can find in Skyrim, the Labyrinthian. I don't have any updates on the channel, so without any further ado, let's immediately talk about the Labyrinthian. The Labyrinthian stands as possibly the largest ancient Nordic ruin we can find in all of Skyrim, and in turn in all of Tamriel. This large Nordic ruin is all that remains of Skyrim's ancient capital during the Merethic era, when the dragon cult was the central power ruling over the province. In these days, the place wasn't called the Labyrinthian yet, but rather the ancient city of Bromjonar, the largest city of the north. Back in the Merethic era, this city was the dragon cult seat of power, the place where the dragon priests that ruled over humanity in service of the dragons would gather to discuss Skyrim's future. The city started as a large temple, built to worship the dragons, and slowly grew to the size of a city-state over the years under the leadership of a prominent dragon priest. The city-state would come to be known as the Great City of Bromjonar, which eventually grew so large that it was decided to make it Skyrim's administrative capital as well as its spiritual capital, with a gigantic underground temple complex underneath it. It was set in a strategic location between mountains and was notoriously hard to attack in its day. A special temple was constructed for the dragon priests to convene in, and this very room is said to have been the place where the most prominent dragon priests from all over Skyrim would gather and temporarily take off their mask and hang it on the wall. During the Dragon War, when the dragon cult was starting to lose ground, the remaining powerful dragon priests decided to seal the most powerful dragon mask they had, presumably traditionally worn by the leader of the dragon cult, into the mask wall, with the intention to keep the mask out of enemy hands while they were still losing. We can presume that this mask, the mask called Conarik, or Warlord translated to our language, had indeed belonged to the leader of the dragon cult who had been slain during the war. Due to the great power of the mask, the rest of the priests would want to keep it from the hands of the enemy by sealing it away. Only when the great dragon priests would be able to gather again, presumably in a victory scenario, would they be able to get the mask back from the temple to appoint a new leader when the war was won. Unfortunately for them, such a day never came, and the mask would only be revealed again when the last Dragonborn, the player of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, would destroy the remains of the dragon priests and bring their ancient mask to Bromjonar and then hang it on the walls. After the Dragon War was lost, the city fell into basically disrepair. Many had fled the city during the war, and most Nords didn't want to return to it, as its architecture and its large temples were a living reminder of the dark past under the dragon's rule. The city center and its temples were abandoned, with only the outskirts of the city remaining inhabited, with small village communities that answered to the Jarl of Whiterun, most of whom didn't really dare travel close to the temples in the ancient center, still inhabiting the area. Eventually, these village communities in the outskirts were abandoned as well, and all that remains were the larger ruins. For centuries, they remained untouched, until somewhere during the First Era the ruins were found by the ancient archmage of Winterhold, Shalador. Shalador, being a powerful mage and fervent experimenter, saw the large underground temple complexes of the ancient city as a great opportunity for his research. He would claim the ancient city as his own and use it as his magical research site. He made a great amount of magical discoveries while working there, using the site for many years. Most of his research of this time is lost to the ages, but among other things it's known that he experimented on a large skeletal dragon, which we can find during the quest, and constructed a large mage set to test potential archmages in the Labyrinthian. This mage also made it so that the place was called the Labyrinthian instead of Bromjonar. After many years of experimentation, Shalador abandoned the Labyrinthian, but his abandonment of the site would lead to many adventurers to try and re-enter it, to try and find the remains of Shalador's research. As Shalador's reputation grew after his death, exponentially large and strange rumors started to circulate around the Labyrinthian and his work there. Like, for example, there was a rumor that Shalador would have hidden the secret of life inside the ancient ruins, which he had reportedly stolen from Akatosh. The Labyrinthian then sat empty and abandoned for most of its existence, with mostly just adventurers trying to enter it. We have no documented events pertaining to the Labyrinthian during the Second Era, but I expect that to change when the Skyrim expansions for the Elder Scrolls Online comes out, as a location like this is sure to be featured in one or two story segments. Might even go about that whole secret of life which Shalador apparently hid there, but we haven't really had any solid proof on. However, we do know that during the Third Era, the usurper Jaeger Thorn hid one of the pieces of the Staff of Chaos deep within the Labyrinthian. This is all during the events of the Elder Scrolls Arena. The Eternal Champion, which is the player of that game, has to travel to the Labyrinthian and retrieve the staff piece in order to defeat Jaeger Tharn and free Emperor Uriel the Septim VII from his imprisonment. We don't exactly know what happened within the Labyrinthium for the next years, but we do know that somehow the Staff of Magnus got trapped within the ruins and got into the hands of the ancient dragon priest Morokai, which was still dwelling in the ancient temple complex beneath the city. Word of the staff being in there spread around Tamriel, and new expeditions into the ancient Labyrinthian were undertaken by several groups. Among those groups was a group of students of the College of Winterhold. This group of students ventured into the ancient Labyrinthian in order to search for the Staff of Magnus, but in the end they were no match for the Labyrinthian and its many creatures and traps. Only one student, the later Archmage Savos Aaron, survived the expedition, with the others dead or sacrificed in order to keep the Dragon Priest with the staff sealed away in the ancient ruin. Savos Aaron sealed the ruins with a powerful spell and took the torque of the Labyrinthian, which would be required for anyone to enter the ruins ever again. It would only be during the events of the College of Winterhold questline in Skyrim when the ruins would be opened again by the player, after Aaron's death. Inside, the player can see the journey that Aaron and his old companions undertook and uncover the truth about their expedition. The player can then free the spirits of those who were sacrificed to keep the Dragon Priest contained, and then defeat the Dragon Priest in order to claim the Staff of Magnus and complete the questline. This is the story of the Labyrinthian so far, but as I stated before, we are likely to learn a lot more about it during the second era in the upcoming Elder Scrolls Online expansions, as a legendary location like this will most likely be featured in the story. That said, there's one last thing I'm personally left to wonder. For years, Archmage Salador used this place as basically his research ground, but at the same time, the undead Dragon Priest Morokai rested deep within the ruins. When the player enters, the Dragon Priest can even speak to them from afar, and with the power of the Staff of Magnus, is able to drain the player's magicka. But in the time of Shalador, Morokai would not have had the Staff of Magnus yet, but at that time, Morokai was there. Did Shalador lock him away, or was he maybe not aware of the Dragon Priest being there? I'm personally intrigued by this, and I personally suspect that a mage like Shalador might have even conversed with the ancient Dragon Priest to try and learn more about history, as Shalador was more than powerful enough to contain Morokai himself. Tell me what you think, as I'm genuinely wondering, and this whole dilemma of Morokai and Shalador was basically the biggest reason for me to even make this video. But unfortunately, there's no lore on the topic, neither do we know how Morokai got the Staff of Magnus, so yeah, whole big of blank space. That said, that's basically all we know about the Labyrinthian. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing and watching the next Elder Scrolls lore video when it drops next Thursday. Before I end this video, allow me to thank my top patrons, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Metaloid1v1, Gabriel Binda, Mr. Christmas and Mr. Para. These guys, along with the others on screen, make my weekly lore series possible. That said, I'll see you all when the next video drops next Thursday. Bye bye.